This video was filmed just before we got the booms back on Olivia. We wanted to share where we were in the process.
So we're getting started on a new project. I don't know when this video will come out, whether it'll be before or after the booms, but I assume it'll be around that period of time. The booms have been stripped, welded, repaired, new hardware put on them. They've been completely re-rigged on the inside. New cables, new blocks, new ropes. I need to get this little project done, and then I need to get the doors built for the cabin doors and most of the cabinet doors, all the ones for the V-berth. I'm not building one for the forward head yet. There's two of them in there. There's kind of a closet, and we're not sure exactly how we're going to use that, so I haven't measured that for a door yet. And then there's the vanity base that I still need to do a bunch of work under there, plumbing and that sort of thing, so I don't want to put that in yet, and I haven't even measured for it because we've still got trimming and all kinds of stuff to do in that bathroom, so I wasn't ready to commit to that. But we've got a pair of doors for the chain locker, a pair for the port locker, a pair for the starboard locker, a single one for the hobbit hole going under the V-berth, which again will service the windlass battery bank, and also the future bow thruster will be put in under there, and then there'll be a battery bank under there for that as well. Chargers, you know, DC to DC chargers, all that good stuff. So I'm trying to get the big case good parts and pieces finished up for the master and for the V-berth, and then I still have a laundry list of stuff to do in the V-berth, and I still need to go back into the master. We kind of did some things in the master and then sat on it for a while I moved into the V-berth to get the major construction done up there, because there was a lot of mechanical and structural stuff that needed to be done. But we were still kind of, I guess we were still sort of feeling ourselves out about what we wanted to do for colors and trims and things like that. And I think we've got that pretty well dialed in. The major structures and all that in the master, obviously, as you know, are already done. We did that headliner system, which you've seen in the previous videos. That's going to get pulled out and replaced. We did, you know, a trim, the dark trim with stainless steel screws, and after we lived with it for a little bit, about halfway through it, I wasn't feeling good about it, and I thought, well, let me finish it up and we'll just let it sit for a while and we'll go do other things and then we'll get back to it. And as one does, minds were changed and direction and focus was changed. That's all getting pulled back out. The headliners, the trim, all that stuff for the ceiling, for the overhead, and then we're going to go back in and put liners back in, obviously, but the valance will be upholstered instead of wood. And then we're going to put liners in, and I'm going to use fast mount clips, very low profile fast mount clips, so they will positively snap up there. And those things are, I think, are good for like 11 to 15 pounds a piece. And of course, those panels won't be that heavy, but a couple of them will be pretty big. So we want to make sure they're really secure. I kind of went down a rabbit hole in the shop because of all the boom work. You know, I spent 2 weeks welding on those booms, getting those finalized, the main boom primarily, and then some touch-up welding on the mizzen boom, and then getting them ground down, getting the pounds of aluminum oxide off of them, smoothed, faired. We put an epoxy barrier coat on both of them to seal the metal, and then used Interlux, the 2001E, as the barrier coat, and then we used Alex Seal 7151, which is a whisper gray, but that's there in their, I think, 501 series top coats, and we were very pleased not only with the color, but you know, I sprayed those and the spray application was pretty good. Took me a little bit of playing with it to kind of get the right balance of reducer for my HVLP and for the weather conditions at the time. 5 coats total on both booms, and then went through the mountain of Garhauer hardware that we had ordered, and currently both booms are re-rigged for topping lift and out haul, both of which are interior. Originally, the main boom was set up for a single line reef for a single reef slab, and that's just not sufficient because that's a massive mainsail. It's going to have to be done for 2 reefing points, but because we're moving the boom up 18 inches, obviously we have to get a new sail made. And once that's made and we get it in, and I can plumb down from the reef points onto the boom, then I will attach probably double cheek blocks and all that, because I'd like to lead the reefing lines obviously back to the cockpit. So the main sheet will come back to the cockpit, which is already in the cockpit actually. It was designed that way. The main halyard, Genoa halyard, and spinnaker halyards will all be led back to the cockpit. Probably not necessary for the Genoa halyard. We may leave that on the mast, but we're definitely going to run the spinnaker or what's going to be a staysail halyard and the main halyard, and then the mizzen halyard will be running as well. And then mizzen sheet, the mizzen vang is actually reachable from the cockpit, so that can be managed from there. We're going to have Garhauer make a solid vang or a hydraulic vang for the main boom, because we're moving it up so high. That double point vang is not going to be sufficient anymore, but I have to get the boom back on the measure for that. Ordered some rope from Right Rope, and they're double braided poly, and real pleased with it because we're going to use it for the control lines. We used them inside the booms for control lines for topping and out haul. I'm going to use them for the mizzen vang, and I'm using it for the mizzen sheet. And then we're also going to be using it we have running backstays for the main and the mizzen. We're going to use it on that, and it's perfectly suited for that. It's got some stretch to it, minimal, but it has some to it, as I was learning when I was making up eyes. So it's got some stretch, so I certainly wouldn't use that for halyards. We need something more, robust for the halyards, but those are perfectly suitable for control lines. I may end up actually using that for the Genoa sheets as well once we get through that process, because now we've had riggers come out, so now all the halyards are free. The only thing we had free before was the main halyard and the mizzen halyard were both operable, but the staysail halyard and the Genoa halyard were jammed in their blocks, and that's a whole long story. I've probably talked about it in the past. We know what started that process, but nevertheless it had to be dealt with by a rigger, and we wanted a rigging inspection, which went well. There are a few things that need to be addressed. None of it is the main standing rigging. Topping lift on the mizzen and main, that downline, one of them is vinyl covered cable, the other one is a Dyneema line with no chafe protection, and it's chafed, so it needs to be replaced. But we have to take both of those masts off and gut them, strip them, and repaint them, rebuild all the hardware, and rewire both masts, because the wiring is just not in spectacular shape. Nothing in the main or mizzen rig needs to be changed, the standing rigging at this point. It's got several years left in it. It just needs to be cleaned up and do a final acute inspection while it's on the ground. But primarily we need to get them down so that we can get them stripped and painted, and the hardware replaced up there. He did bring the wind instrument down. We've got a B&G wind instrument that was frozen up, because I think that unit now is probably 4 years old. When we bought the boat, it was 2 years old, and it was already locked up. So, and they want $100 for that bearing cartridge to replace that on the anemometer. It's not happening. I'm going to take it apart. I'll source proper bearings, hopefully better bearings than what they have in there, and then I'll buy 2 sets of them so we've got them on hand. And then I'm going to go ahead, the wind vane itself seems to be free and functional, but I'll replace the bearings in that, and again buy a double set of bearings so that we can service that, because those things are just, I mean, I get it, it's electronic equipment and all that, but Those things are almost $800. You guys have got to do better than that with hardware. Which leads me to this. These are Schaefer exit block. They are not huge. They do operate for all of the halyard exits. So Genoa, staysail, and main, and then mizzen halyards all exit through these blocks, and I'll show you in a minute they're worn out. These things are 4.5 inches overall, face plates 2 3/4, 2 inches wide. Stainless steel, probably 18 gauge stainless. It's not hugely thick. They're adequate. They're a little bit bent up. I mean, they're 40 years old, so they're worn the hell out. I mean, if you look, that used to be like a pulley. You can still see the pulley profile there. But they've gotten jammed and frozen and just have gotten ground to death. This one's been rounded off. It's mostly round. This is probably off the mizzen because it's in the best shape. And then this one has been ground clean. And they're sloppy and they're just a mess. So they have to be rebuilt. We actually looked, again, they're Schaefer. You can see the little S with the dolphin in it. They're Schaefer. And so I looked them up, and I try real hard not to go on rants about hardware. We just found the price out for these, and I just kind of lost it because, you know, with the exception of Garhauer, who their hardware has been beautiful. I mean, high quality, ball bearing, heavy gauge stainless, solid sheaves. I mean, really good stuff. With the exception of them, everybody else that I've dealt with that has marine in the name or that's marketed as marine, you guys have lost your minds. It's just pure insanity. These things, we priced them out for a comparable replacement, new, from Schaefer, or at least still under the Schaefer brand. These things were $298 a piece. 4 of them. That's $1,200 for exit blocks. I'm talking to the entire marine hardware industry. Y'all have lost your collective minds. I get why some hardware is expensive. I still think that you guys have lost your minds about winches. I can't see anything in that winch that justifies those winches being thousands of dollars. It's your business. Do with it what you will. But I'll tell you what, you find me a company that starts mass producing, you know, decent quality winches, and they're charging an appropriate amount of money for them, and those guys are going to be billionaires because everybody in the sailing community will quit these big name brand makers because y'all have just, it's insane. I mean, these things clearly need to be rebuilt. You see that? That's bronze. You see the back of it? It's literally worn down to the steel pin that's in the center. So for less than $25 a piece, I went to McMaster Car, got bronze rivets. Amazon, I ordered bronze rod. If I can open this child-proof bag up, idiot-proof apparently. Bronze rod to replace those. I'll turn that profile down on the lathe. If I need to make solid rivets instead of using these, which I highly doubt because I expect that these will work just fine. These are the same size. If for whatever reason I think that I need an axle bushing, I'll just turn it out of the brass. I've got more than enough. I mean, one of these rods should do all 4 of these pins. And these pins in the back, I'll evaluate them when I get them off because they're not terribly worn. They're just crusty. And I don't know if that piece, because those are stainless. But the main mast had a bee infestation. And again, I presume this one's got a little bit of corrosion on it from the pin, but it's mostly shiny still. But there was a bee infestation in that main mast years ago, and apparently they built a honking hive up in there because the halyards that had been stuck in the mast are poop brown from the old hive remnants. I pulled a 4-foot column of hive and dead bees out of the bottom of the mast when I did the mast step repairs. So these things are just crunchy. We're gonna drill these things out, separate these plates, flatten these flanges back out, polish these things back up, make new sheaves, a new guide pin, and if we need to, we'll make a new pin here. But I got 2 brass rods. One is more than enough to replace all of these. If I need to do these, then I can turn those out of brass as well. I'll have enough there. And again, if I find that I need a bushing in here, then I can always either fashion it out of the brass, or I can run down to the local hardware store, ours is called Graco, and pick up these, which these are not the right size, these are 1/4 ID. These rivets are 3/16 ID, but these are just sintered bronze bushings. So if I need to, I can run down there and pick some of those up for 3/16, and then I'll just turn the axle cavity on the pulley or on the sheave appropriately. But those are going to be Delrin. This is half of the length that I ordered because I turned a crap ton of washers out to separate the freshly painted surface from the stainless steel hardware, and to fill gaps on gooseneck pins and a couple of other pieces of hardware. I just turned bushings out of this Delrin. Delrin's not that expensive. That big 3 1/4 inch roll is what I did the rollers on the bow roller with. I made those from scratch just because I couldn't find ones that fit exactly to my bow roller, and because I made that bow roller, and because the ones that I could find were astronomically expensive and piss poor built. They were honeycombed. It's a whole thing. Anyway, I'm not getting down that rabbit hole. So anyway, I have the stuff that I need. Now I want to get this last little project done so I can go back and get these back in the mast so that the halyards that are there are not rubbing up against the opening. And then I'll be taking those booms over to hang those, but most likely Dave's coming in a couple of weeks. My buddy Dave, who you guys have seen on here a couple times, I think he's been down, I think this will be his 4th trip down. He comes from Central Ohio just to come down and spend one of his 2 weeks of vacation every year just spending time on the boat, hanging out and catching up and all that. So pretty awesome dude, always has been. So I may hold on the booms until he's here. That main boom is, again, it's 20 feet long. I can lift it up. I lifted it up and carried it out of here by the bales, and I can put it on my shoulder and carry it. But with my back, because you can do something doesn't mean you really should. Anyway, I have blithered on enough. Thanks for following along, and we'll see how this goes.